to grow a large home building company. It takes some different sets of nuances as well. On the flip side, there's a reason the best markets have the biggest builders.
And then the game is it's not necessarily let's build 1,000 homes, it's let's build 100 homes 10 times.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Builder365 podcast, where we celebrate all things home building, the industry that we love so very much. That's right, it's Builder365 with merch available in the Shore store. There you go. You can go to shop.jeffshore.com. Amy O'Connor, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing fantastic. And I do want to point out that last time we were all wearing white, and this time we're both in blue.
How
it's
about that?
It's a thing.
Yeah,
audience, we are not planning this. This is just who we are.
We are just that in sync. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, Amy, tell the people how you and I first met. I don't think most people know that story.
Do you want me to go back when you saw me present? Is that the
Yeah.
go back after?
Yeah.
Well, I was working at Richmond American at the time. And we had a huge event in Texas where we brought all the sales leaders and all the division presidents. And of course, we hired you to MC it because who else? And I was in a breakout room. I was one of the national trainers. And we were in these rooms that have like the folding walls, right? So you can hear through them. And my group kept getting in trouble because it was too loud. And everybody was like, you need your group to be quiet. And I just took that as let's be louder. Just suck less. I mean, I don't know what to say. If yours is boring, like that's kind of on you. And I remember you stepping in from the back, and I was like, oh my God, Jeff Shore. Jeff Shore is in the back of this room, and he's watching me. And so that was really, I think, the first time. And then you and I ended up speaking, and you were so wonderful and gracious and complimentary. And I went to dinner that night, and I told my good friend Kevin Bell, I said, I'm going to work for him. I don't know how, don't know when. But that's my goal. That's what I'm going to do. That's my goal.
Well, and my side of the story is that I stood in the back of that room and went, oh, my goodness, this is the person who's going to replace me here if I'm not careful. And then there was that night when you said we went to dinner, you talked to Kevin Bell. Well, the dinner was at like a ranch of some kind, like this country ranch, whatever. And there was a bus ride to get there. And I purposely went out of my way to sit next to you to get to know you better during that ride. So there you go. It was meant to be right from the very beginning. And then I don't know how many years later, then we figured out how to work together. So
yeah. It's amazing how that works.
It's been a great ride for sure. We want to let you know, as always, that our podcast, the Builder365 podcast, sponsored by Open Door. A very special thanks to them. Builder365 is powered by Open Door for Builders. Easy sales, smooth moves. You can learn more about the work that they do at opendoor.com/builder365. We really appreciate that partnership so much. Hey, Amy, as we continue to look at what's going on out there in the economy, and it was just sort of a shift of things that are happening right now. We're not quite sure what's going to happen, but we do know that there's a lot of angst, a lot of American angst. And there was really interesting. The Gallup organization asked the question here, and this is an open-ended question, but the question is, what is the most important financial problem facing your family today? What's the most, and this was done in April here, okay? So just a couple of months ago. What's the most important financial problem facing your family today? What do you think the number one answer was?
I mean, there's an obvious one, right? Which makes me think the obvious one must be wrong. And that's, I mean, I go straight to affordability, right? Loan to value. Do they have enough money to qualify for the loan? That's where I go first. Right.
Okay. So, but keep in mind that the question was not about housing specifically, but you're thinking that that's what came up number one.
Now I don't know. Say it again now. Maybe
so the question is, what's the most important financial problem facing your family today?
Oh.
I mean, you don't have to change your answer.
Yeah, I don't. Savings? I don't know.
All right. So first of all, your first answer on the cost of owning or renting a home came in at number 2.
Okay.
The number one answer was the high cost of living, was inflation. Yeah. And just to round out the top 5, high cost of living, cost of owning or renting a home, too much debt, not enough money to pay my debt, healthcare costs, and then just lack of money, low wages. But it's really interesting when you look at that story of inflation, which everybody's been talking about so much, and of course all of the politicians are going to try and spin it the way they want to spin it, right? So, you know, right now, since we're in an election year, you know, you're going to have Donald Trump saying inflation is spiraling out of control. Well, that's actually not true. Inflation is stable. Joe Biden is going to say, look, inflation is stable. And say, yes, but it's stabilized at a much, much higher price. So, you know, it really depends on what that spin is. But I think at the end of the day, it's very, very interesting. You know me, Amy, you know that I'm politically independent, and not that it matters who I'm going to vote for or whether I'm going to vote for presidency at all. I'll sort of leave that one hanging out there. But the fact of the matter is that our nation has a history of voting economically. And I think that when we see that 41% say that inflation is a real problem, even though that technically inflation is in check, it probably wouldn't bode as well for Biden as it would for Trump along those lines.
Yeah. No, I mean, we're seeing a huge divide, right, in that way, in several different topics, right? You can even go beyond inflation. But what I think is interesting is where people decide whether or not inflation is good or bad or up or down doesn't usually come from data. It usually comes from rhetoric and feeling. And you and I both know there's a lot of flaws in both of those things.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I concur that there is a limited data set for people to decide whether inflation is a thing or not. And I think that's why the psychology of the gas pump is it has way more weight than it really should as it relates to how people feel about inflation. But having said that, it's a real high prices are a real thing. And so when you look at the idea here, the combination of higher prices with people concerned that they're just not making enough money, there's a stress point out there. There's no question about it. And in fact, Nolan, if you would put up on the screen there the graph that shows the households that are spending 30% or more. There it is. So the households that are spending 30% or more of their income on housing, overall, that's 31%. Now, some of you might be looking at it and saying, well, that number doesn't seem that high, except that it's really skewed by people who have been in their home for a long, long time and are spending very little. It's, people like me, I'm a baby boomer, and baby boomers have a lot more equity in their home. My home is paid for, so I don't pay any amount on the mortgage. It's just taxes and insurance. But when you look at that, especially at the renters number, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on this, Amy, that number really jumped out to me, that over half of renters are spending 30% or more of their income on housing. That sounds problematic.
I just think it's devastating. I don't know how you get ahead when you're spending so much of your income on temporary housing that you do not own, right? We see in the past, a lot of times people would do the rental as a way to buffer and save money and build towards a home. I don't see the ability to do that at that ratio.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And if we no longer do 0% down loans, and if we are doing them any out there, we probably shouldn't, but it's a whole other story. But there's no question it's a huge disadvantage to people who are paying so much money in rent. How do you save for a down payment? How do you do that? Really difficult to do. I don't know what the answer to this is. I really don't.
Well, it came up on the last episode, right? That where parents are having to help more than ever. Where like, the parents that are a little bit older and like you have the equity in your home and are able to help out with that down payment. I mean, I don't know that that's a sustainable system, but that is what we're seeing.
Right. Yeah. Well, look, it's that or it's moved to far less expensive parts of the country. And the problem there, of course, is we're seeing fewer and fewer, quote, far less expensive. So I live in California, and I almost laugh out loud now when I hear Californians say, I want to move to something that's far more affordable, like Austin or Nashville. And we're like, I'm sorry, but
good.
that ship sailed a long time ago. Yeah,
No,
yeah.
true.
Now,
Yep.
having said that, and I'll use this as a segue into our guest interview today, there are markets out there. There are markets out there where you can still purchase a brand new home for getting close to $200,000. There's not many of those markets, but we're going to talk to one of the people in one of those markets today, and we're going to hear just a great success story. On our last episode, we had Doug Bauer, the CEO of one of the largest home builders in the nation. Now we're going to talk to a small regional builder and two of our favorite people who run Esperanza Homes in Southwest Texas. And when I say Southwest Texas, I mean like it's a pitching wedge into Mexico from where they are. It's a border town, but they've got their niche. They understand their buyers, I think, better than anybody out there, and they're just really, really good people. We're going to talk to Nick and Shant, Nick Rhodes and Shant Suntani from Esperanza Homes. Take it away. Nick Rhodes, Shant Suntani, thanks for being on the Builder365 podcast. Happy to have you both joining us from, well, you say South Texas, and when we say South Texas, we mean like way South Texas. Like you get in the car and drive for a few minutes, you're going to be in the Gulf of Mexico there. So you are way down there. Give us a little bit of your background. You've been working together for some time. Kind of curious about your personal background. Where did the two of you connect initially that led to where you are today?
Yeah, thank you for having us on, Jeff. So Shant and I met in freshman year of high school. Yeah, we both went to high school in San Antonio, Texas. And then I can tell Shant's story of how he has a more interesting way of getting to that high school. He lived there. He was a boarder. But I grew up in the Canyon Lake, New Braunfels area. I went to high school at a place called TMI in San Antonio. And that's where I met Shant. And Shant, I'll let you give your background of how you ended up at TMI.
Yeah, thanks for having us on, Jeff. Yeah, I mean, my mom went to boarding school, and she always wanted one of us to go to boarding school. So I didn't go too far. I was 2 hours away from Laredo, Texas, where I'm from, and went to boarding school in San Antonio. And that's, for the most part, where I met Nick for the first time. And it was definitely different moving away from home at like 14 years old. And yeah, that's kind of where it started. And then we're the only two people from our graduating class that went to college in Dallas at SMU. So first day on campus, Nick messaged me saying, "What are you doing today?" And that's when we really started to be really good friends from that point.
Very cool. So you connected there. You went to high school, SMU Mustangs, right?
Yep,
Am I
Mustangs.
correct on that? Eric Dickerson, if I remember right,
That's
the
correct.
most famous alum of SMU. And so you stayed together. You stayed connected. How did you get into home building? What give us, just bridge the gap here. What happened there?
Yeah, so I'll share the backstory about how I moved to McAllen 10 years ago, straight from Dallas. So I went to school at SMU with Shant, and my family business brought me down here. So we were, my family's originally from the East Texas area, was in the meat packing industry, and they sold that business and acquired a lot of farmland in McAllen, Texas. And then my parents retired to San Antonio. That's where I grew up. And circa 2004, 2005, my parents launched their first community down here in the McAllen area. And we had a large project coming online in 2014 called Tres Lagos. And that's when we opened it in 2017. And that's what brought me down here, was to work on that project. And my original task was find builders to sell all this land to. We had bought, there's several thousand acres of farmland in the area. And our goal was mainly to be a master developer, sell pods, lot takedowns to large production builders. So that was my parents' kind of plan. When I moved down, I kind of was put over that project. And I'm a demographics, research, analytics guy. And I was trying to find builders to sell these lots to, and figured out, I think it was the largest place in the United States without a builder doing more than 100 houses a year. So the production builders were all left. And we had a home building company called Esperanza Homes that launched in 2007. And my first year we moved down here, we were mainly building in a 55 plus product that we couldn't find a builder for. and we built 10 homes my first year. And we had these large projects coming online, and I fell in love with the home building industry and talked my parents into that we can scale a home building company and probably sell most of these lots to ourselves and grow with the area. So we went from 10 homes to 20 homes by second year, and then we got to 40 homes. And at that point, we really started to get a system in place, and we thought we could really scale the company. But we needed help on the sales front. So I think the year I convinced Shant to move down here, we closed 47 houses that year. And then he was working at Frost Bank at the time. And Shant, get to know him, sales extraordinaire. He's like an anti-banker. You wouldn't think of him working at a bank. And I called him. Shant's bilingual. He's from the border. His grandmother and sister were living in McAllen, coincidentally. So I convinced him to come sell houses down in McAllen. And the rest is history. I'll let you, Shant, to tell you intro stories.
It took Nick a few tries, I'll say. I was actually had just been promoted at Frost Bank. I was working on the commercial lending side, and I'm in the office with an individual who I'm sharing an office at the time. His name is Jordan, and we went through our first year as associate relationship managers, and then you get placed. And it was this kind of weird spot where I got placed downtown San Antonio. And I remember just walking right to my manager's office at the time, Rick, and letting him know that he needed to promote Jordan instead of me because I was moving to McAllen. And it was just spontaneous. It was random. I hadn't even called Nick back and told him I was moving. But Nick was visiting me more just as college buddies, casually over the weekends. And every once in a while, he'd come down and say, "Oh yeah, this salesperson we have, he's doing really well down here. Oh yeah, you should consider moving down here." In my mind, I'm thinking, I don't know if I want to go back to South Texas. But when that moment came, I just took the leap and been in the industry for over 7 years now.
It's interesting because you go back to the original plan, right? We've got these, couple of thousand acres down in McAllen, Texas. We're going to try and sell them to, all of the biggest builders. We're still sort of coming out of some dark days in the industry, and that would have been a really hard sell. Let's face it, because even as I look at it now and where you are today, you're one of the few places in the country, first of all, where you can buy a brand new home for around $200,000, right? Or the low $200,000. And that's market driven, of course. But you're also one of the few places where you are not overrun with every big builder on the planet. That must be really interesting when you're having conversations with builders. Nick, I know you're involved in a Builder 20 group, for example. It must be really interesting to say, here's what my life is when I don't have every big builder looking over my shoulder getting ready to pounce. It makes for an interesting nuance to the industry. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, no, it's it has pros and cons. That we did have all the publics down here, and post-recession, KB, Horton, U.S. Homes, everybody pulled out and left. That gives us an opportunity from the sense of, we don't have that competition. There's also a reason they're not down here, which, as you mentioned, low price point, low income area, not growing as fast as the rest of the state of Texas. To grow a large home building company, it takes some different sets of nuances as well. On the flip side, there's a reason the best markets have the biggest builders, because they're great they're great markets. Right. So our market's really tough from the income side of things. So we do a lot of creative things to get the price points down, to create a lot of value for the customer, a lot of mortgage, credit improvement, to be able to get our customers and families in the homes that most builders don't see in those larger markets where you have higher income, better jobs, better credit scores. So there's pros and not as much public builder competition. That also comes with the cons of the actual credit profile and, quality of income and job levels down here.
Right. Well, Shant, why don't you lean into that a little bit? Because, you got a buyer who's oftentimes struggling to make a payment that's less than $2,000 a month here. And you and I have always talked in the past about, how do we sell on emotion and really get people emotionally connected and all of that. But you're dealing with a buyer who's just like, can I scrape together enough, and can I find a lender who will give me that money in the first place? How have you had to address that with your salespeople? It's a weird thing because it's a kind of a gritty sale, and yet you still want to get people involved in what they're really doing here, which is buying a home for them and for their families.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, the first thing that I try to get every person that's on our team to understand is that there's nothing more powerful than someone who wants to buy the home, right? Whether their credit is shot, whether their income isn't there yet, they find a way to get that cosigner. They find a way to get mom and dad to chip in, and really built into the culture down here. Everyone that lives in that household tends to chip in a little bit, and we're patient with them. We allow people to improve their credit during the build. We help people improve their credit through helping them pay for their credit repair counseling. We get people across the finish line because we know that those buyers are the most grateful. They're the ones that we like to serve the most because those are the ones that are your biggest promoters. They end up referring customers your way because you took the chance on them that that no one else really could tolerate down here. So yeah, I mean, there's nothing more powerful than someone who wants the home. I'd rather have someone who wants the home, who needs some work, than someone who's on the fence and fully qualified. That's just how we do business down here.
On your website, you're actually selling a home for less than $200,000. It's a very, very unique home in a retirement community. But I don't think anybody who's listening says, wait, you can still buy a brand new home for less than $200,000. Tell us about that.
Not just in a retirement community, in a starter home community in Mission, right next door to that. We've got a home at 197,900 there. And we're able to achieve that really even at decent pricing and decent margin. And what we're trying to do is capture home ownership, right? That's what the game is down here. Is we're trying to get people to be able to afford these homes and get to a price point close enough where they can qualify. So first and foremost, we try to build a product around our audience, and then we try to build a sales team to serve that audience.
Right. What can you do as an independent builder, Nick, that the big boys can't do, or at least that they can't do well? What's the advantages to being a small regional versus a big public?
And a couple to note on that, as far as we get a low price point. We also provide a lot of value in the house that a lot of other builders might not at our lower price. So they're all Energy Star, 4-sides brick, spray foam, natural gas water heater, smart home enabled. So we try to pack a lot of value, and then we joke. We try to run more of a nonprofit if other builders are listening. So it's a tough, lower margins to get the volume we get. But as far as for the most part, it's probably better to be a big public builder. You have more money, you have more scale, you can buy things less. So we try to lean into being more of a niche. So we're not afraid to develop land. A lot of builders just want to buy lots that come down here. So we self-develop most of our own lots, design the communities, and we'll source a lot of land deals before they're even entitled to give us an advantage. And then we have a longer-term hold than a lot of larger builders do. And we about half our closings are in master plan communities where we're the developer, and we put in amenity centers, parks, trails, set up special taxing districts through local municipalities. And it's a lot longer return profile than just a normal community a lot of the publics are targeting now. And in smaller markets especially, there's not as much capital for large master plans. So Houston, Dallas, the big metros, there's a lot of really good developers doing that. In these smaller areas, there's not nearly the capital chasing the amenitized communities. And it's probably not as good of a return as in a big metro. So we lean into that. It's kind of counter positioning by providing that for our customers down here. And then we also can make decisions a lot faster, so we don't have land committees and underwriting rules. It's just our gut is it's a good land deal. We're not afraid to do it that day if we want to. And we're not constrained for a lot of the processes. So that can be for better or for worse, but definitely lets you move faster.
And same goes for taking the risk on a sale or pricing a home a certain way, or deciding to start and move inventory. We just move really fast and we're flexible. I think that's just one of the big advantages that we have.
Yeah, the other thing on the product side, being local, we're very product focused. So the McAllen Metro is 93% Hispanic. It's not a normal Texas metro. So from an architecture standpoint, included features, we like to think we really know the market well, what the customers value, what they don't. And, we feel really good about our specifications that we start. And we're not as just, a lot of large builders have gotten more and more templatey, where they want the same SKUs in the same markets across the country. Where we have an advantage that we can customize that to our area. We're also very pre-sold driven versus most large builders. So 65% of our sales are actually pre-sold. They go through our design studio, and we do address-specific CAD plans. We'll do some, certain special requests, custom options. We try to be a little bit friendlier from that side versus a larger builder as well.
You're in McAllen, Texas. You could throw a rock into Mexico from where you are. I mean, you're right there as a border town. What are some of the unique characteristics of your Hispanic, of your Latino culture that make them different as home buyers? You said you know your buyer well. Are there things that you look at either in community design, in home design, in amenities, or even in sales approach for that buyer that perhaps you wouldn't be focusing on quite so much if you were in, say, Houston or Dallas?
Sure. So the area is 93% Hispanic. We're the lowest income place in the United States per capita, but we have one of the highest per capita retail spending in the state. So that always throws people for a loop. How do people make the least amount of money and spend the most? So 33% of every dollar is spent by somebody from Mexico. So we're only 90 miles from Monterrey, which is the wealthiest city in Mexico. We're 5 minutes from Reynosa, which is our border city. So we have a lot of retail commerce coming in from wealthy Mexican shoppers, which drives a lot of the economy that people don't realize. That affects our profile of our buyers, what employment they're doing. From an employment standpoint, we're pretty standard: healthcare, firefighters, cops, school teachers, municipal. That's our main driver of home sales. Our buyer tends to be younger than the average. So our average home buyer, I think Shant can quote me, I think they're like 29 or 30 years old. So be younger. And then
80% of our buyers were between 26 and 35 at the end of Q1 for those funded loans closings, actually.
And then another secret, we don't like to tell too many people, but people assume everyone must have a lot of kids. It's very kid driven. Half our buyers don't actually have kids yet. So, they're actually buying a house before kids or planning for kids. So we try to design really cool floor plans that are actually smaller than the average. So we have a lot of people buying homes that are 1,100 square feet, 1,200 square feet, 1,000 square feet, because they don't actually have as many children, where a lot of the bigger builders come down here building larger boxes. They think everybody wants 5 bedrooms. There's 7 people living in these homes, and that's actually not the case. So that's how we get the price point down, is we try to design a really cool house that's smaller in size, if that makes sense. And then we do a lot of amenities.
Yeah.
So having young people hike and bike trails, parks, and then another advantage to us in our area, we tend to target, better employed versus the area, a little higher end buyer for our area. And we're really big in community maintenance. So we have a property management company and a landscape company, and we maintain and manage all the communities even after they're sold out. And we really want people to know when they drive in one of our neighborhoods, and it stands apart. So we're pretty restrictive on covenants, management, and people can tell historically the property values in our communities have gone up faster than competitors. A lot of that's because of that tight management.
When you look at where you are and you say, there's probably somebody who's listening right now and they're just thinking, this is really interesting, right? They've got this otherwise untapped market, or a market that's not being invaded by all the big builders. Here's a market in the United States that's untapped. I wonder if there's an opportunity for a builder to go in and build 20 or 30 or 40 homes a year like you did when you got started. What advice would you have for a builder who is looking at an area that might be projected down the road to be profitable, but in the short run, it's not going to be attractive to the big builders?
And you're talking about for a market that doesn't have a big build already.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would say lean into look at the analytics for that market and I think it's best to start with a niche. What is not being done in the market that could, if that's a area in Texas that you could build port on motorhome homes, right? And there's retirees buying, but that's how we started doing motorhome housing. A lot of these small towns.
Define for our audience what motorhome housing is. I don't think most
There's a
people know
house
what
that has a
is.
motorhome garage attached, an RV garage attached to the house. They're popular with retirees.
Okay.
That could be a niche. You could have 20 of those a year and probably have a really good living. So some of these smaller communities, since they don't have big builders, the big builders, a lot of them have done a really great job of getting price points more affordable, tight margins, more affordable pricing. Some markets that don't have that, there's probably an opportunity to build really low-cost new homes. And what they might find is a lot of these municipalities, the friendly ones want housing. A lot of them are willing to incentivize that as well. And if you have local roots, you might be able to get some municipal incentives to get more houses. Big builders not going to want to mess with that kind of politicking in a small town. So those are little advantages you have by being a smaller builder. And you can lean into that in certain markets. The way even though it seems like we only build in one market, we actually build, we have our company broke of it into divisions, and we're in about 6 different cities, just all within probably a 70-mile radius. And they all have their own nuances and demographics and municipal, but they don't really compete with each other. So we really kind of feel like we more build in 6 or 7 smaller towns. If you add them all up, the numbers get bigger, but we really treat it pretty hyper-local.
Right. Shant, let me ask you about staffing where you are, and you've got 93% of the market is Hispanic. Do you have to hire people who are bilingual at that point? And what do you do, not just for the sales department that you run, but for all the departments? Is staffing a challenge in a market like yours?
We don't really have any other builders to pull from. Let's say I can't go and steal another home builder's salespeople. That hasn't gone well because it's not necessarily like I'm pulling from a pool of a big builder's talented pool of salespeople, right? So we really create our own. We pull from other industries. We've pulled from furniture sales. We've pulled from automobile sales. That hasn't been the best for us. We've pulled from people who are just in the service industry and hospitality. We pull people from a variety of different areas that are just. We've had teachers become salespeople. We've had people fresh out of college that have never had a job.
But Sean, it wouldn't be just just be salespeople though, right? No. I mean, you've got to find, how you're going to find your superintendents and your warranty reps. I mean, nobody's coming to you from another builder. It seems to me that you would have to have your own internal programs to be able to onboard people who, one, are going to represent the culture, but two, probably know nothing at all about the home building industry.
And that's exactly it. Every one of our superintendents starts off as in an assistant capacity, and they progress through a pipeline of learning before they become a superintendent. And for the sales team, we do a kind of deep onboarding of 60 to 90 days to get them ready. And then based on where we think they will thrive best is how we place them. And we try to do a lot of shadowing and kind of self-grooming, but really all of our sales team is completely homegrown, which is fun. It's exciting. You get this individual who you get to kind of teach a certain way. There's no bad habits to get rid of. It's everything that you learn is learned here. And that's what makes our sales team so really so skilled, is they've only sold homes for one place, and it's Esperanza Homes.
Right. Yeah. We're just about out of time, but let me ask you, how do you grow? What's next for a builder of your size in your location? Is it just scaling up to more of the same, or are there new frontiers that you guys are looking at?
So we grew to where we want to in our market. Right now we're building about 20% of the houses in the county, in the area. And then we've expanded down to Brownsville, which is about an hour away, and we're growing our market share down there. We're launching a new master plan community, and we acquired property and Corpus Christi. So that's going to be our newest market. That's about 3 hours away. So right now we're just trying to continue to do well in our current markets, and then we're looking at mid-sized Texas cities, that have the right opportunities. There's a few other ones on our list that we're looking at long term, and then just focusing on better customer experience, getting our systems and processes better, to grow whenever we're able to and see the right opportunity.
Really
sounds like fun.
The game is it's not necessarily let's build 1,000 homes. It's let's build 100 homes 10 times. I remember, Nick, you brought that message to us 4 or 5 years ago, and that's the model we continue to replicate. And that's the way we scale our teams.
Yeah, we set a goal in 2017.
Yeah.
We wanted to build 1,000 homes a year by 2027. We closed 47 homes that year. I think we're on track to do like 600 or 700 here this year and next year. So we're trying to get there. We have a couple more years left, but.
And in 2017, we did something near 40 homes, and Nick comes to me with this giant list and says, "I'm not spending $1 on marketing until you call every one of these people." And we just started booking appointments, taking sales, and sold so many homes we had to hire some people to build them. And it's kind of how it went.
We didn't touch on was Shant. So the year he started, we closed 40 houses. And from a conference room, we had a master planned community 25 miles away that didn't exist yet. And we had a list of a couple hundred names on it, VIP list. And we had no salesperson. So Shant started, didn't know what a 2x4 was. And then 30 days later, he sold 100 houses from a conference room in 90 days. All pre-sold. And it was it was fun. We learned a lot. And then it was fun to see Shant. So he's gone from our top producing salesperson to a sales manager to director of sales to our VP of sales. And he's got a 27-person sales team and 6 sales managers. And it's been really awesome to be part of that progression too.
And a trophy over his shoulder there as the National Association of Home Builders Sales Manager of the Year 2 years ago. So there you go. All evidences of the work that he has done. Guys, it's a tremendous story. It really, really is. And I think it shows, for one thing, it shows the power of achievement drive, right? When you've got the goal and you're willing to do what it takes, you drive into it, and it's fantastic. But it's even better that you're serving a market that so desperately needs you, and it's got to be incredibly rewarding day after day to do what you do. You're absolutely to be heralded in our industry. Thanks for taking a few minutes to sit down and chat with us. Very inspiring story.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Jeff. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having us, Jeff.
Well, there you go, Amy. You know that Nick and Shant and the whole team at Esperanza are just our favorites. We just love those guys. How'd you enjoy that?
I could listen to them all day long. It's just such an interesting way to approach the business. We look at all these issues that we're having, and here's a viable solution for some people and potentially for some builders.
Yeah. There's a sort of a purity in the way that they, do things. They're not dealing with trying to figure out how to make Wall Street happy over here, or how to line up $100 million worth of funding for this master plan over here. There's a realness to it, and I can tell you flat out, Esperanza has that sort of family feel to it that you saw in the interview. Great people, great organization, and it's nice that you can still buy a home for the low 200s and even break under 200 in a couple of cases. Nice to know that opportunity is still out there.
Yeah.
Hey, before we wrap it up, let's just have a little fun here, Amy. I've heard a new term here that I never heard before. The term having to do with the way that we design homes is barkitecture. Yes, I said that right. Barkitecture, and how we do pet-friendly options in a new home. Nolan, put that first picture up on the screen here of the dog washing station. Amy, is it real? Is it over the top? What are you thinking about the climb up the stairs to the dog washing station here in what I guess is a utility room? I doubt that's anybody's kitchen. What are you thinking?
Yeah. Well, I'm a little embarrassed to say when you said barkitecture, I'm not a dog person. And I was like, bark? Like on a tree? I don't understand. Right? So that's honestly where my mind went first. But, I I think they're here to stay. We know that people love their fur babies, and sometimes they love their fur babies more than their real babies. And when I did have a dog, having to wash it is a pain in the butt. And trying to get into a groomer, I have a harder time getting into a groomer than getting my hair appointment. It's just bananas. And so, yeah, I totally see how people would love that and would pay for it.
Yeah. Right. Well, I take Brody to the groomer once a month for a haircut, but every other week, once a month, I actually bathe him, and so that means he's in our shower. We've got a ledge on our shower that he can stand on, but it's a pain. It is, and. Now, would I do this in my home? No, I wouldn't. How about that other one, Nolan? Put that other picture. This is great. The pet food station built into a kitchen cabinet, complete with a source of water to be able to fill the water. Amy, cool idea or just over the top silly? What do you think?
Cool and dumb. Cool idea, but then you're so stuck there, right? Like if I want to move my cat's food, I just move it. But once it's sort of built in, that's where it is, and I don't like the permanency with that.
Fair enough. My guess is this is one of those things where you go to a design center appointment because you just bought your brand new home, and they're showing you some of your options, and people go, "Ooh, that's really cool." And then they say, "Yeah, well, that'll be $4,500. Like, it's not that cool. So, I don't see it catching on anytime soon. So, All right. Well, there you have it, everybody. Another episode of the Builder365 podcast. Thank you, as always, for joining us. We sure love having you here. Please feel free to share. We appreciate that very much. But until next time, you know what to do. Go out there and change someone's world. We'll see you next time.
Bye, y'all.